Thanks very much, Fred. Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, especially the inductees. It's the reason we're here tonight. So without further ado, our first inductee for this evening comes to us from the sport of harness racing, Steve Mahar. Stevie Wonder was born in Blacks Harbor in 1948. His love for horses would make him one of the greatest harness racing drivers and trainers in maritime history. In 1966, Steve Mahar became involved at St. John Exhibition Park under the watchful eye of Jimmy Doherty. They worked together in St. John, Montreal, and New Hampshire. Later, Mahar had a stable of horses in the United States. He was among the top drivers at Pompano Park in Florida, in Monticello, New York, at Foxborough, Massachusetts, and in Bangor, Maine. During his career, he has won almost 3,000 races and has career earnings of more than $3 million. In 1989, Mahar set a maritime record for most wins, 260, and most money earned in a single season of maritime racing. During his career, he has guided horses to victory on most of the major tracks in the Maritimes, including the prestigious Gold Cup and Saucer at Charlottetown with Henry Butler in 1980. Mahar drove the first maritime bred to break the 2-minute barrier, that win coming with Gemini Risk at EPR in 1983 in a time of 1:59.4. Stephen Lee Mahar, inducted into the St. John Sports Hall of Fame on May 8, 1997.
He's been announcing races I've been in ever since I started driving. There are a great number of other people who have played a part in my career whom are too numerous to mention. However, there are a few I would like to thank here tonight. First of all, I would like to thank my family. They say behind every good man there is a good woman, and I have 3 of them. My wife Twyla and my 2 daughters, Tara and Bonnie. We have managed to stay very close for more than 25 years. It wasn't easy. We had to do a lot of traveling and moving around, sometimes changing schools 2 or 3 times during the year, but they never seemed to complain. All the miles we traveled, Twyla did 99% of the driving while I slept. She always says, "You drive the horses and I'll drive the car." Getting introduced into harness racing was through a very good friend of mine, Don Queen, who now is a very successful trainer in New Jersey. I see his mom here tonight. She was a pretty good cook, too. His family raced a large stable of horses at Exhibition Park, and when we were kids, we would go to the track after school and on race nights doing odd jobs. After a few years, I worked my way up the ladder and got my license to drive. At first, I tried just to get around and stay out of trouble and get the feeling of things. I tried to be a little more aggressive and started winning races. It seems where you're winning, people tend to take notice a lot quicker. It seemed like no time, and owners and trainers were asking me to drive their horses. Some of these owners have stayed with me for years. People like Lloyd McKinney, Don Gabreth, Willard Jenkins, Jerry Lowe, Hugh Fitzpatrick, Paul Cooper, Galen Dempsey, Joe Lindsay, Albert Ninus Goodine, just to mention a few. Some of the most memorable moments were driving horses like Seltzer Blue for Hugh Baird of Hampton, going undefeated as a 2-year-old, setting many records, some of which still stand today. Another great win, one of the most prestigious, was the Gold Cup and Saucer on Prince Edward Island with a horse called Henry Butler, owned by the Goodines in Fredericton. A couple of other great memories were winning 8 races on a 10-dash program, which was a North American record, and winning 284 races in 1990, which is still a maritime record. But being here tonight has to be the greatest thrill achievement of all those memories wrapped up into one. And I would like to thank the selection committee and all those responsible for my induction here tonight. Thank you, and I hope to see you all at the races Saturday.
Our next inductee is a longtime friend and a fellow sportscaster, the King, Ingham Palmer. He was called the King with good reason. Born in 1933 in Summerside, PEI, Ingham Palmer was the voice of harness racing in the Maritime provinces, calling races from the judges' stands in PEI, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. During a 42-year career, Palmer called more than 25,000 races, more than any other person in the history of Canadian harness racing. During his career, he also called races in Ontario, Winnipeg, and Montreal. As a sportscaster at CFBC Radio in St. John, Palmer promoted the races and helped to make St. John Exhibition Park the giant of maritime racing. His harness racing columns appeared in the Moncton Times, the St. John Telegraph Journal, and various other maritime publications. In 1973, Palmer was named sports director at CFBC and quickly became St. John's most listened to sportscaster. His main focus was amateur sports, promoting the city's and the province's athletes and teams. His morning sports editorials had a vast following as far as the CFBC signal carried. In his editorials, he pushed hard for lights to be installed at Memorial Field. He also pushed for a major winter sports facility in St. John. His Sunday morning sports talk show had an outstanding following, and again his focus was amateur sports. In his spare time, he owned and coached amateur hockey and baseball teams. Ingham Palmer, inducted into the St. John Sports Hall of Fame on May 8, 1997.
Thank you, Paul. I think rather than going through with the usual formalities, the formal recognition of head table guests and all that stuff, I think I'll just do it nice and simple and say, hi, and a pleasant Thursday evening to you, sport. I was thinking of another approach. Here they come. But it is a great honor being here and being inducted into the St. John Sports Hall of Fame. And you know, damn it, I'm nervous. Done that Paul bit for 10 years. I thought Steve Mahar was going to be nervous. Anyhow, we'll get used to it. But pure and simple, can't be any doubt about it. My big mouth got me here. But I have to thank Sam Doyle for nominating me and the selection committee for their kind considerations. You know, I came here 40 years ago. Left a couple of times to go to Toronto, Winnipeg, and Moncton, but came back to my adopted home, St. John. Boy, a city steeped in sports history and tradition and blessed with countless colorful sporting personalities. You know, I can think of the rabbit and the hat, the crow, apples, pickles. There's Rip, Aber, Earl the Pearl, Dr. Dick, the Big A over at Thistle St. Andrews, Avery Stewart, and of course out at EPR, the Wiz, and Stevie Wonder. Now, over the years, I've had great moments watching these people perform in sports. They and many more people like them provided me with many, many great stories to tell, and I certainly enjoyed telling them. Like I can give you for an example, why at one time did we refer to Harry the Hat as Tiger Paws? And why did Billy Donovan nickname the Hat one time as Trash Can Harry? There are two great stories, I tell you folks, but for Harry's sake, I'm not going to tell them tonight. Right now, though, I'd like to congratulate my fellow inductees, the St. John's, that basketball team from several years, a little bit before my time, before I came to St. John's. But down through the years, I tell you folks that I've heard of the St. John's many, many times. And the St. Peter's baseball team from 1963. That was one year I left St. John to go to Moncton, so I missed the St. Peter's. But again, I've heard many, many stories, and I've told some of their stories over where Paul is standing down through the years. Charlie Sullivan. Boy, what a great name from a great curling family. Sullivan. See him sitting over there, Dr. Hearn, Charlie, Dave, Charlie Jr. Sullivan's the biggest name in curling in St. John and New Brunswick, no doubt about that. And you know, of course, there'll be more Sullivans enshrined in this hall. That young fellow over there, boy, did you do us proud this past winter. Chris Skinner. Now, I remember this kid when he was playing minor football out in East St. John. So I had the idea right then, way back then, that this kid was destined for greatness. I watched, like you people did, with St. John pride as he graduated to high school football, had to go to Moncton for some of that, on to college ball at Bishop's, and then the big dream, the CFL. Can you imagine somebody from St. John making the CFL? Chris Skinner did. And now we come to Steve Mahar, a fellow that I call Stevie Wonder because he does wondrous things with a set of reins and a racehorse. He had a taste of the big time at Pompano Park in Monticello, as you heard just a moment ago. But he came back to have his two daughters gain a New Brunswick education, and that they did. But make no mistake about it, Stevie Mahar could still be in the big time today. But hey, we're glad we've got him at EPR. So, congratulations to you all. Now, I'm working off a script. And when you stray from the script, you ad-lib. So I'm going to stray from the script a little bit, and I'm going to get some of you people out there to help me do this thing. And I wonder who the oldest person here might be tonight. It is not Ralph McClanahan. God, he's great. Anybody here 95? How about 93? How about 92? I'm going to ask you to stand. Introduce you to my mother. And I found out as I walked in, there's an old school chum here from Summerside who popped in, Paul Skierman. I taught him how to skate one time, and my mother wants to see you, Paul. So how about Ingham Palmer? Well, if one of you out there were to ask me what was the smartest thing that I ever did in my life, well, I'd have to tell you that the smartest thing was marrying a pretty little nurse in Truro way back in 55. And then, the next smartest thing, coming back to CFBC in 1969 to work again with Ralph McClanagan and Bob Lockett. And Ralph and I were in the sales department then. I'd be doing my thing also out at EPR, and Ralph was handling sports part-time. And on occasions, I'd have to pinch hit for Ralph. Like, well, if he was tied up in the afternoon out making a sale, I'd pinch hit for him. Or, like the time he went through the automatic car wash with the sunroof open, I had a pinch hit for him then. And then, the next smartest thing I did came in 1973 when Ralph became station manager, and a fellow called Mark Lee came on the scene as program director. For then, I left sales and became the sports director. A smart move? Sure, it was a smart move, but you know, I think that's probably one of the smartest things that Ralph and Mark ever did. And that's when things really started to roll. It was an opportune time because the St. John Mooseheads, they were starting to roll along the Hardy Cup Trail, or the Hardy Cup Trail. And I covered them as they played and beat Charlottetown, then Amqui, and then Paul Martin's Heroes, the Clarenville Caraboos, and then on to Emblem, and finally the Rosetown Red Wings. I guess you can remember the old LVR was really jammed to the rafters, and I can still close my eyes and see big John Dalton with a booming blast from the blue line. And St. John had its first National Hockey Championship. Let me tell you, that was one big thrill. Had more fun at that time, too, and I'd go to work in the mornings, and I'd pick up the Telegraph-Journal, and I'd read what Billy had to say. And then on the air, I'd take him to task, arguing my point against the old Buckwheat Bugle. Remember the Buckwheat Bugle, Billy? After the Mooseheads, many more thrilling moments in local sports, and you know, some disappointments too. Like the time I was the manager of the St. John Clearview 77s for Doug and Leroy Hatfield. We called the team the 77s in the Junior A League because at that time, St. John was putting in a big push to get the 1977 Canada Games, so it seemed appropriate that we call the team the 77s. This would be back in about 73. Then we came up with another idea. We thought, well, our captain was Mark Sawyer. Used to wear Gordy Doolan's old number 12, but we thought, even though at that time in hockey, you didn't see a number above 30, we decided we'd put the number 77 on the back of Mark Sawyer. And so we did. I can't remember whether we won the game or lost the game, but I do remember halfway through that game, Sonny McDonald coming out of his office at the Simons Arena and saying, Mark Holland had given the 77 Canada Games to Newfoundland. Boy, oh boy, were we ever disappointed. Bob Lockett said he couldn't guarantee the launch safety in St. John. But we got the games in 85. 11,000 people at the opening, 11,000 again at the closing. And then on top of all that, we had the CFL games and at the Kennedy Game Stadium. And around then, things were really booming out at Exhibition Park. Well, the days of superstar horses like Power Baron and Scotch Gaumont, and then along came Winner's Accolade. And boy, I tell you, those early provincial cup races, they were really something else. The best horses in the eastern seaboard of Canada and the United States. Third year we put one on, we set the maritime record for wagering. Those cups gave us our first sub 2-minute mile, Nero's BB and Gentleman Jim Doherty. You know, that was a goal that we had tried for years to reach. Tried and tried and tried. And all of a sudden, Jimmy did it one night. And you know, after all those years of trying, the very next day, that horse that Stevie drove, Jim and I risked, bred in St. John, paced in 159 and 4, and then the very next race, another maritime bred paced in 59 and 4. So it was a long, long time coming, but it's here many, many times since then, and now we're down to 154 and 3. Had some fun in Little League Baseball. I think probably I'm the only coach in Lancaster Little League to lose 2 championships in one day. I was helping Dick Fitzgerald, and the Tigers were playing against Harry Johnson, Freddie Johnson. Those boys played hard. And bottom of the 7th, they're the home team. We've got it won. And 2 out. I forget what the score was, but I know we're on top. 2 out, runners at first and second. Third man up, third kid up. A grounder down between first and second. And the kid running from first to second hit him. Okay, you know, it's an automatic out. Runner interference, huh? The ump missed it. And that loaded him up. The next kid to come up was my goaltender. They went her before, and he hits a grand slam. So there goes the Little League Championship. And then that afternoon, the Senior Little League Championship, I had a fill-in for Vic. We're playing Dr. Eddie Lund's team. And boy, my kids are doing well. Halfway through the ball game, we're up 12-5. Eddie rallied his troops and beat us 13-12. And that was it, 2 championships in one day, gone. And I've never coached in the league since. Wasn't fired, but Vic never asked me back to help. And I'll tell you too, folks, that I had some fun at Lancaster Minor Hockey. And I had a lot of fun with the St. John Junior Beavers, a team I started sort of by accident and ran it for 11 years. And I was really surprised tonight and pleased to see that some of those kids that played for me 16, 17 years ago were here. So this is another part where I say, I'm going to get some help. So I'm going to get these kids to stand up. One had to leave. Billy Merrithew had to leave. But there's Billy McGuire. Billy, where are you? Stand up, Billy. Mark O'Brien. Billy Donovan Jr. Chris Colton. Chris Bartlett is here tonight. And my son Robbie, who played and then later on coached. Now you guys wore the sweaters and you did the skating, but you helped me for 11 years to help keep alive one of the greatest names of all time in maritime hockey, the St. John Beavers. And something else that gave me great moments, St. John Vito's winning the Allen Cup. You know, I grew up hearing of the great Moncton Hawk hockey team with Dud James and Sammy Twinkletoes McManus winning the Allen Cup, and then the year after the Halifax Wolverines, and I thought, gee, that was really something back in the 30s. And here I was, sort of almost part of the family with the St. John Vitoes. It was sad to see their demise. And another big disappointment that I'm sure I shared with you folks, Heidi Hanlon. Boy, oh boy, remember how close she came to winning the Canadian Ladies Curling Championship. Last rock, she's got the hammer, down it goes. You know she's going to win. It catches a hair, and off it goes. One tough break for Heidi. But again, I'm sure you're going to see her up here some night before too many years go by. And another disappointment, I guess we can sort of laugh at it for a while. Time we were all tuned in to see the Blue Jays play here. The Toronto Blue Jays in town to take on Matt Stairs and the national team. Night before the game, it snowed, remember? So I've had my share of good moments and bad moments. Moments we all remember. As a Leaf fan and a Red Sox fan, you sort of get used to it. You realize that there must be some truth into the curse of the Bambino. You remember that ball going between the legs of Billy Buckner. And you remember Harold Ballard, what he did to downsize that hockey team. But we remain loyal and hopeful. So now we're all set for maybe 1997, 98. The Leafs might be a little better. One disappointment, though, I have to touch on as I leave you tonight. Something I don't want to get into. You know that we played, for a long time, the need for a, harbor station in St. John, and the coming of the Flames, and the fact that we raised $30,000 at CFBC for the feasibility study. When it came time for that to come about, that was the time I first saw my lawyer. So anyhow, I just didn't become part of the St. John Flames family as I was with the Vitoes and the Mooseheads before them. Sometimes things just don't work out the way you wanted them to work out. So that's it. My time has come and gone for tonight. Let me leave you by saying St. John sports have been good for me and my family, and I hope that I have been good for St. John sports. Thank you.
Our third